The first thing I noticed when I walked through my front door wasn't the lingering smell of antiseptic still clinging to my skin, or even the dull ache from my surgery site. It was the unfamiliar designer purse sitting on my entryway table, right next to the family photos I'd carefully arranged over the years. I'm Hope, and this is the story of how I dismantled my husband's entire life in exactly 37 days. Honey, you're home early. Melvin's voice carried from the kitchen, tinged with something I'd never heard before: panic. The doctor said you'd be in until tomorrow. They cleared me for home recovery. I called back, my fingers trailing over the smooth leather of the stranger's purse. Guess I'm healing faster than expected. The sound of hurried whispers and shuffling feet made my stomach clench. I'd spent 15 years of marriage learning Melvin's patterns, his tells, his lies. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. She emerged from my kitchen wearing my favorite apron, the one my mother had given me for Christmas. Young, gorgeous, and completely unapologetic. Hi, I'm Skylar. Melvin's told me so much about you. My hand gripped the doorframe until my knuckles turned white. Funny, he's never mentioned you. Melvin appeared behind her, his face flushed. Hope, let me explain. Skylar's been helping around the house while you've been indisposed. I didn't want you to worry about things while recovering. Things? I echoed, watching as Skylar's hand settled possessively on my husband's arm. The cooking, the cleaning. Skylar chirped, as if this was the most natural situation in the world. Melvin mentioned you're usually so busy with work. I thought I could help ease the burden. I forced a smile, years of corporate negotiations finally proving useful in my personal life. How thoughtful. And where exactly did you two meet? At the gym. Melvin cut in quickly. She's a personal trainer. Of course she was. I glanced at her perfectly toned body, then down at my own hospital gown-creased clothes. Well, isn't that convenient? My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Faith. Made it home okay? Call me. I should get settled in, I said, starting toward the stairs. Doctor's orders, lots of rest. Let me help you. Melvin moved toward me, but I held up a hand. I've got it. You two seem busy. In our bedroom, my bedroom, I noticed the changes immediately. Her clothes in my closet, her toiletries on my vanity, the guest room sheets on our bed, because of course she'd been sleeping here. My hands shook as I dialed Faith's number. Hope, are you okay? Faith's voice was instant comfort. He moved her in. The words came out in a whisper. While I was having surgery, my husband moved his mistress into our house. That son of a... Faith's curse was cut short by my laugh, hollow and sharp. Want to know the best part? I found something this morning before checking out of the hospital. I was using Melvin's laptop to check our joint account and a notification popped up. There's another account, Faith, one I never knew about with regular transfers to Alan's private holdings. Alan? His business partner? The same. I moved to the window, watching as Skylar's red convertible sat in my driveway like a wound. I took pictures of everything before the notification disappeared. Whatever they're doing, it's not legal. And now what? I touched my surgery scar through my shirt, thinking of how Melvin hadn't even visited me in the hospital. How he'd been too busy with work to drive me there. How everything suddenly made terrible, perfect sense. Now I'm going to take everything from him, I said quietly. The house, the business, his reputation, everything. And I'm going to make him watch while I do it. Hope. Faith's voice was careful. Are you sure? Revenge isn't always... This isn't just revenge, I interrupted, watching as Melvin and Skylar shared a kiss in my kitchen window. This is justice. He didn't just betray our marriage, he's been betraying everything we built together. And I'm going to need your help. There was a pause. Then Faith sighed. I'm in. What's the plan? I smiled, remembering the business card Andy, my attorney, had slipped me during my last divorce consultation, the one Melvin didn't know about. First, we're going to need to make some calls, starting with a very interesting conversation with Alan's wife about some suspicious transactions. Downstairs, I could hear them laughing, probably thinking I was safely tucked away, nursing my wounds. They had no idea that while they were playing house, I was declaring war. "Get some rest," Faith said. "I'll be there first thing tomorrow." I hung up, my reflection in the window overlaying their embrace in the kitchen. "Enjoy it while it lasts," I whispered, "because this is just the beginning." Faith arrived early the next morning, armed with coffee and her signature no-nonsense attitude. She took one look at Skylar making smoothies in my kitchen and practically dragged me to the back patio. "Okay, this is worse than I imagined," she whispered, sliding me a cup of real coffee, not the green juice Skylar had tried to force on me earlier. "She's actually playing house in your house." "Playing is the right word," I said, pulling out my phone. "Look what I found when I went through Melvin's desk last night." I showed her the photos I'd taken of the account statements. Faith's eyes widened as she scrolled through them. "Holy shit, Hope. These transfers, they're huge. And they're all going to offshore accounts?" "Through Alan's company first," I confirmed. "I already sent everything to Andy. He's meeting us at his office in an hour." The patio door slid open and Skylar stepped out, all perky energy and fake concern. "Hope, you shouldn't be out in this cold air after your surgery. Melvin specifically asked me to take care of you." "I'm fine," I said, standing up. "Actually, Faith is taking me to my follow-up appointment." "Oh, I can drive you—" "No need," Faith cut in, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "I've got it covered." Andy's office was exactly what you'd expect from a top-tier divorce attorney. All leather and mahogany with a view of downtown that probably cost more than my car. He greeted us with a grim smile. "These documents you sent," he said, getting straight to business. "They're exactly what we needed, but we have to move carefully. One wrong step and they'll know we're coming." "What's our first move?" I asked, settling into one of his plush chairs. "First, we document everything. Every interaction, every receipt, every time she sleeps in your bed. Second, we start tracking those transfers. I've got a forensic accountant friend who owes me a favor." Faith leaned forward. "What about Alan? Could we use him?" Andy's smile widened. "Funny you should ask. His wife called my office this morning. Apparently, someone anonymous sent her some very interesting bank statements." I tried to hide my own smile. "How unfortunate for him." "Here's what we're going to do," Andy said, pulling out a legal pad. "Hope, you're going to play the perfect unsuspecting wife. Let them think you're too focused on recovery to notice anything. Meanwhile, we'll start gathering evidence. Faith, I need you to be her eyes and ears when she can't be there." "Done," Faith said without hesitation. "I can also talk to some people at the country club. Melvin's not exactly subtle. There might be others who've noticed things." "Perfect." Andy turned to me. "And Hope, I know this will be hard, but you need to stay calm no matter what they do. The moment they suspect something, this all falls apart." I thought about Skylar wearing my clothes, sleeping in my bed, using my things. "I can handle it." "There's one more thing," Andy said, his expression serious. "These financial records, this isn't just about divorce anymore. This is fraud, possibly money laundering. When we move, it has to be all at once. They can't have time to hide the money or destroy evidence." "How long?" I asked. "Give me 2 weeks to get everything in order. Use that time to gather what you can. And Hope?" He caught my eye. "Don't let them see you coming." Back in the car, Faith gripped the steering wheel tight. "Can you really do this? Live with them, pretend everything's okay?" I watched the city scroll past the window. "You know what Melvin said to me this morning? He said he was trying to make this easier for me. Like moving his mistress into our home while I was having surgery was some kind of favor." "Bastard. The thing is," I continued, "he actually believes it. He thinks I'm so weak, so dependent on him, that I'll accept anything to keep our marriage. He has no idea who I really am." Faith reached over and squeezed my hand. "Show him." When we pulled up to my house, Skylar's car was gone, but there was a strange man leaving through the front door. He looked familiar, one of Alan's accountants, I realized. Looks like they're already scrambling, Faith observed. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Alan. Good. Let them scramble. You're scary when you're plotting revenge, you know that? I thought about the years I'd spent building a life with Melvin, all while he was building something else behind my back. I'm not plotting revenge, I said, opening the car door. I'm delivering justice. There's a difference. And what's the difference? I smiled, thinking of the evidence safely stored in Andy's office. Revenge is emotional. Justice is strategic. And I'm very, very good at strategy. The confrontation with Skylar happened on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 9 days into my surveillance operation. I'd been documenting everything meticulously. Photos, videos, conversations recorded on my phone, when she cornered me in the laundry room. We need to talk, she said, blocking the doorway. About your snooping. I continued folding laundry, careful to keep my voice neutral. I live here. It's not snooping. I saw you in Melvin's office last night, going through his desk. She crossed her arms, trying to look intimidating. He won't like that. Interesting. I set down the towel I was folding. Are you going to tell him? Because I have some things to tell him too. Like how you've been meeting Alan at the Riverside Hotel every Thursday. Her face went pale. How did you... Or maybe we should discuss those interesting phone calls you've been making to his competitor's office. I pulled out my phone, showing her the call log I'd obtained. 4 calls last week alone. Melvin might be interested in that. You're bluffing. Try me. I stepped closer. You're not the only one who can play games, Skylar. The difference is, I'm better at them. She grabbed my arm. Listen, you bitter old... The sound of the front door opening cut her off. Faith's voice rang through the house. Hope, you ready for lunch? I yanked my arm free, smiling as I noticed the red marks her fingers had left. Perfect. In here, Faith, just documenting some interesting bruises from our house guest. Faith appeared in the doorway, phone already recording. Got it all on video, honey. Want me to send it to Andy now or later? Skylar backed away, her confidence evaporating. This isn't over. Actually, I said, it's just beginning. After she stormed out, Faith lowered her phone. That was beautiful, but she'll run straight to Melvin. I'm counting on it. I pulled out my own phone, sending a quick text to Andy. Because in about 10 minutes, Alan's wife is going to call Melvin about some very interesting credit card charges at the Riverside Hotel. Faith's eyes widened. You didn't. I did. And when Melvin confronts Alan, he'll mention Skylar's calls to their competitor. By dinner, they'll all be too busy suspecting each other to notice what we're really doing. Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Andy. Alan's wife made the call. Stand by for fireworks. We didn't have to wait long. Within an hour, Melvin's car screeched into the driveway. He burst through the front door, face red with anger. Skylar, he shouted, get down here. I sat calmly at the kitchen island, pretending to read a magazine while Faith worked on her laptop nearby. Skylar descended the stairs, looking nervous. What's this about you meeting Alan? Melvin demanded. What? Who told you that? His wife just called me. Said you've been meeting him at hotels, making calls to our competitors. He turned, finally noticing me. Did you know about this? I looked up innocently. Know about what? I've been focusing on my recovery, remember? Like you wanted. The front door opened again and Alan stormed in. Melvin, we need to talk. Now. About how you've been sleeping with my girlfriend? About how your girlfriend's been selling our information to Jackson Industries. I caught Faith's eye across the kitchen. She was still recording everything, trying not to smile. That's ridiculous, Skylar protested. Melvin, he's lying. Then explain these. Alan threw down a stack of phone records. And the hotel receipts. As they argued, I quietly slipped upstairs to Melvin's office. With everyone distracted, it was the perfect time to grab the final piece of evidence we needed, his external hard drive. I found it exactly where Faith's friend from IT said it would be, hidden in a false bottom drawer. When I returned downstairs, the argument had escalated. Skylar was crying, Melvin was shouting, and Alan was threatening to dissolve their partnership. Maybe, I suggested quietly, you should all take this somewhere else. The neighbors might hear. They left in separate cars, Skylar trailing after Melvin despite his obvious fury. As soon as they were gone, Faith burst out laughing. That was incredible. Did you get it? I held up the hard drive. Every transaction, every email, every dirty little secret. Andy's going to have a field day with this. And they have no idea you orchestrated the whole thing. Faith shook her head in admiration. You know they're going to destroy each other trying to figure out who's betraying who. I connected the hard drive to Faith's laptop, watching as years of fraudulent transactions appeared on the screen. That's the beauty of karma. Sometimes it just needs a little push in the right direction. What's next? I thought about the divorce papers sitting in Andy's office, ready to be served. Now we let them tear each other apart. By the time I make my move, there won't be anything left to fight over. My mother always had impeccable timing. She showed up unannounced the morning after the confrontation, taking one look at Skylar making breakfast in my kitchen before turning to me with fire in her eyes. Hope Elizabeth, what in God's name is going on here? Mom, I started, but she was already advancing on Skylar. Who exactly are you, and why are you in my daughter's kitchen? Skylar's spatula clattered against the stove. I'm a friend of Melvin's. A friend? My mother's voice could have frozen hell. The kind of friend who wears my daughter's wedding anniversary necklace? I looked closer. Sure enough, Skylar was wearing the diamond pendant Melvin had given me for our 10th anniversary. The sight made my blood boil, but I kept my face neutral. Mom, let's talk outside. On the back patio, my mother gripped her handbag like she was considering using it as a weapon. Tell me everything, now. So I did. The surgery, the betrayal, the financial fraud, everything except my plan for revenge. But my mother, sharp as ever, saw right through me. You're planning something, she said. I know that look. It's the same one you had before you took down that corrupt CEO at your old firm. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Andy. Meeting in 20. Urgent news about Alan. Mom, I'm coming with you. Her tone left no room for argument. And on the way, you're going to tell me what you're really up to. At Andy's office, Faith was already waiting with a thick folder of documents. Her eyes widened when she saw my mother. Mrs. Reynolds, I didn't expect— Angela, please. My mother interrupted. Now, what's this about Melvin's business partner? Andy cleared his throat. Actually, this might be helpful. Mrs. Reynolds, Angela, do you remember a company called Pacific Ridge Investments from about 20 years ago? My mother's face went pale. How do you know that name? It came up in our investigation of Melvin and Alan's finances. They seem to be using the same shell company structure. That's impossible, my mother whispered. Pacific Ridge was shut down after— She stopped, looking at me with horror. After what, Mom? She sank into a chair. After your father's death. He was investigating them. Said something wasn't right with their books. The night of the accident, he was meeting with someone about it. The room went silent. My father's car accident had always been attributed to bad weather and worse luck. But now— Andy, I said, my voice shaking, what exactly did you find? He spread out several documents. Pacific Ridge was officially dissolved in 2003, but the structure was maintained. New name, same players. And guess who was a junior accountant there at the time? Melvin, Faith breathed. He never told me he worked there, I said. He said his first job was at— He lied, my mother cut in, because he knew I would recognize the name. Your father. She took a deep breath. The night he died, he said he was meeting with a young accountant who wanted to blow the whistle. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Are you saying Melvin was involved in— We can't prove anything about the accident, Andy said quickly. But we can prove he was there, that he knew your father, and that he's been running the same scheme for 20 years. Faith reached for my hand. Hope. Show me everything, I demanded. Every document, every connection. As Andy and Faith laid out the evidence, my mother sat quietly, tears rolling down her cheeks. 20 years of believing my father's death was an accident, and all this time, I want him destroyed, I said finally. Not just divorced, not just exposed, destroyed. Hope. My mother touched my arm. Revenge won't bring your father back. This isn't just revenge anymore, Mom. This is about justice. For Dad, for us, for everyone they've hurt. I turned to Andy. How soon can we move? Give me 2 days to compile everything. But Hope, if we do this, there's no going back. This goes beyond fraud charges. This could implicate people in your father's death. Good. I stood up, my decision made. Let's give them exactly what they deserve. Back home, Skylar was still in my kitchen, still wearing my necklace. She smiled nervously at my mother. I made lunch if you'd like. My mother walked past her without a word, heading upstairs. I stayed behind, looking at the woman who had unknowingly inserted herself into a decades-old web of lies and murder. That necklace looks lovely on you, I said softly. Enjoy it while you can. Everything's about to change. The confusion on her face would have been comical if the situation weren't so tragic. She had no idea she was just a pawn in a game that started long before she met Melvin. A game that was finally coming to an end. The cracks in Melvin's carefully constructed world started showing at breakfast. His hands shook as he read something on his phone, coffee sloshing over the rim of his cup. Everything okay, honey? I asked, watching him from behind my own phone where I was recording everything. Fine, he snapped. Just business. Skylar reached for his phone. Let me see. He yanked it away. Don't touch my phone. The doorbell rang before she could respond. Alan stood on our doorstep, looking like he hadn't slept in days. We need to talk, he said to Melvin. Privately. I stood up. Use the study. I was just leaving anyway. But instead of leaving, I went to the guest room where Faith had helped me install a small recording device the day before. Through my earphones, I could hear everything. They're asking questions about Pacific Ridge. Alan's voice crackled through. About what happened in '03. That's impossible. We buried that years ago. Well, someone's digging, and they're asking about Thomas. My father's name. My hands clenched into fists. It was an accident, Melvin insisted. Everyone knew that. Was it? Alan's voice rose. Because I've spent 20 years wondering if you actually... Shut up. Something slammed. Probably Melvin's fist on the desk. No one can prove anything. Someone's already proving it. The SEC called this morning. They're auditing everything, Melvin. Everything. A pause, then Melvin spoke quietly. We need to clean house. All the records, all the accounts. It's too late. They've frozen everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Andy. SEC raid happening now at their office. Stay clear. I smiled, remembering how eager the SEC investigators had been when we brought them the evidence. 20 years of fraud tends to get their attention. The study door burst open. I quickly ducked into the bathroom as Alan stormed past, face red with fury. This isn't over, Melvin. I waited until he left before heading downstairs. Skylar was pacing in the kitchen. What's happening? She demanded. Why was Alan so angry? Maybe you should ask Melvin, I suggested. Or better yet, ask him about Pacific Ridge Investments. Her eyes narrowed. What's Pacific Ridge? The company where my father caught them cooking the books 20 years ago, right before his convenient accident. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? Ask Melvin. I'm sure he'll tell you all about it, or... I pulled out a business card. You could talk to the SEC investigators. They're very interested in hearing from anyone involved. She snatched the card. You're lying. Melvin would never... $5 million, I cut in. That's how much they embezzled through Pacific Ridge before my father caught them. Want to guess how much they've taken since then? The front door slammed again, Melvin rushing out to his car. Skylar ran after him, calling his name, but he drove away without looking back. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Faith. Turn on the news, now. I flipped on the kitchen TV just as Skylar came back inside. The headline scrolled across the bottom. Major financial fraud uncovered. Local business partners under investigation. Oh my God, Skylar whispered. The investigation centers around a decades-old cold case. The reporter was saying. Sources say new evidence has emerged linking the death of prominent accountant Thomas Reynolds to an ongoing fraud scheme. Skylar turned to me, realization dawning. Reynolds, that's my father. Yes. I watched her face as everything clicked into place. Still think Melvin's your ticket to a comfortable life? I didn't know, she said weakly, about any of this. No, you didn't. You were just the convenient distraction while they tried to hide their tracks. But here's the thing about tracks, Skylar. They always lead somewhere. My phone buzzed one more time. Andy. Alan's asking to make a deal. Says he'll tell everything. You should pack, I told Skylar. The FBI will be here soon with search warrants. And I'd leave that necklace. It's evidence now. She reached up to touch the diamond pendant, tears in her eyes. What have I gotten myself into? The wrong side of history, I said, turning back to the TV where Melvin's company logo was being splashed across the screen. But don't worry, you're just a footnote in this story. As she ran upstairs to pack, I sent a group text to Faith, Andy, and my mother. It's happening. Alan's cracking, Melvin's running. Time for phase 2. Faith responded instantly. Ready when you are. Let's finish this. I touched my father's picture on the wall, remembering his smile, his laugh, his unwavering sense of justice. We're almost there, Dad, I whispered. Almost there. The FBI agents were thorough, I'll give them that. They went through every room, every drawer, every file in our house. I sat in the living room with Agent Sarah, watching as they cataloged evidence. Mrs. Ward, she said, we found something interesting in the basement safe. She handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photos. Old ones from before I met Melvin. One showed him with my father, both younger, both smiling at some office party. The date stamp read 3 days before my father's death. He knew, I whispered. He knew exactly who I was when he met me. Agent Sarah leaned forward. That's not all we found. A second envelope contained documents, insurance policies, death benefits, all with my father's name. And behind them, handwritten notes detailing exactly how to make a car accident look natural. My phone rang. Andy. Hope, Alan's talking. He's telling them everything. How bad? Bad. He says Melvin planned it all. Your father was going to expose them, so Melvin... He paused. He tampered with the brakes. The room spun. Agent Sarah steadied me with a hand on my shoulder. We need you to come down to the station, she said gently. There are some questions. The front door burst open. Melvin stood there, wild-eyed and desperate. Hope. He stumbled forward. Whatever they're saying, it's lies. Alan's trying to frame me. 2 agents moved to block him, but I held up my hand. Let him speak. I want to hear this. Baby, please. He tried to approach, but Agent Sarah stepped between us. I loved your father. He was my mentor. I would never... Funny, I said, holding up the photos. You never mentioned knowing him. Not once in 15 years of marriage. His face went pale. Where did you get those? The same place I got these. I spread out the handwritten notes. Your handwriting hasn't changed much in 20 years, has it? Those aren't... I can explain. Explain what? My voice rose. How you murdered my father? How you married me to keep an eye on his family? How you've been running the same scam he died trying to expose? I did it for us, he shouted. Everything I did was to give us a better life. Mr. Ward, Agent Sarah cut in. I'm placing you under arrest. As they read him his rights, my phone buzzed with texts. Faith, just watch them arrest Alan at his office. Mom, the FBI found more files at their storage unit. It's over. Andy, divorce papers are ready. Say the word. Melvin struggled against the handcuffs. Hope, please, you can't do this to me. I walked over to him, calm and steady. I didn't do this to you, Melvin. You did this to yourself. 20 years ago, when you chose money over my father's life. 15 years ago, when you married me to cover your tracks. And 2 weeks ago, when you moved your mistress into our home, thinking I was too weak to fight back. You planned this? He realized, horror dawning on his face. All of it. Justice comes in many forms, I said, thinking of my father. Sometimes it takes 20 years and a daughter's determination. As they led him away, Skylar appeared at the top of the stairs, suitcase in hand. Is it true? She asked. Did he really kill your father? Ask him yourself. I'm sure the FBI will let you visit him in prison. She hurried past the agents, pausing at the door. I really didn't know. I believe you, I said. That's why I made sure the SEC knows you were just another victim of his manipulation. You should be clear of any charges. Tears filled her eyes. Thank you. After everyone left, Faith and my mother arrived. The house felt empty, cleaned out by the FBI, but somehow lighter. So, Faith said, pulling out a bottle of wine, how does it feel to take down a 20-year-old criminal enterprise? Like justice, my mother answered for me, touching my father's picture. Pure justice. Andy called again. Hope, you need to see this. Alan's confession. He's naming names. Judges, politicians, everyone who helped cover it up. This is bigger than we thought. Good, I said, thinking of all the families who lost money to their schemes. Let it all come out. The divorce papers, he continued. Should I file them now? I looked around at my empty house, finally free of lies and secrets. Yes, it's time. Faith raised her wine glass. To Hope, the woman who brought down an empire. No, my mother corrected, raising her own glass. To Thomas, who raised a daughter strong enough to finish what he started. I thought of Melvin in handcuffs, of Alan's confession, of 20 years of lies finally exposed to the light. To justice, I said. However long it takes. The sun was setting outside, painting the sky the same orange it had been the day my father died. But this time the color didn't bring pain. It brought peace. The courtroom was packed for Melvin's arraignment. I sat between Faith and my mother in the front row, watching as they led him in wearing an orange jumpsuit, a far cry from his usual designer suits. All rise, the bailiff called. As the charges were read, first-degree murder, conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, Melvin kept looking back at me, his eyes pleading. I stared straight ahead. How does the defendant plead? The judge asked. Not guilty, Your Honor, Melvin's lawyer responded. A commotion erupted at the courtroom doors. Alan was being led in by his own set of guards, his lawyer rushing behind him. Your Honor, Alan's lawyer called out. My client wishes to change his plea agreement. He has additional information about the murder of Thomas Reynolds. Melvin jumped up. You lying bastard. Order! The judge slammed her gavel. Mr. Ward, control yourself or you'll be removed. Alan was brought to the front. He looked directly at me as he spoke. 20 years ago, Melvin Ward orchestrated the death of Thomas Reynolds. I helped cover it up. And I have proof. Objection, Melvin's lawyer shouted. Save it for trial, the judge said. Mr. Peters, you understand that by making this statement, you're admitting to conspiracy after the fact? Yes, Your Honor. Alan pulled out a USB drive. This contains everything. Security footage from that night, original documents, recordings of conversations over the years. I kept it all as insurance. Melvin lunged at him, breaking free from his guards. I'll kill you. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Guards tackled Melvin as he reached for Alan's throat. My mother gripped my hand as Faith filmed everything on her phone. Take them both into custody, the judge ordered, and get that evidence to the DA immediately. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed us. Andy appeared, creating a path through the crowd. Hope, is it true your husband killed your father? Did you know when you married him? Was this a revenge plot all along? Andy guided us to a private room. The DA wants to talk to you. With Alan's evidence and Melvin's outburst in court, they're pushing for maximum sentences. Good, my mother said firmly. Let them rot. My phone buzzed. A text from Skylar. Saw the news. Meeting with FBI tomorrow. Will tell them everything I know about the offshore accounts. Smart girl, Faith commented, reading over my shoulder. Finally picked the right side. The DA entered, carrying a thick folder. Mrs. Ward, we've reviewed the new evidence. The security footage clearly shows Melvin tampering with your father's car. With this and Alan's testimony, he'll never get out. Andy finished. Neither of them will. There's more, the DA continued. The financial records implicate several prominent figures. Judges, politicians, business leaders. This could bring down half the city's elite. Do it, I said. Every last one of them. Later that evening, we gathered at my mother's house. The news was playing footage from the courtroom, showing Melvin's attack on Alan on repeat. Look at this, Faith said, scrolling through her phone. Your story's gone viral. Justice for Thomas is trending. People love a good revenge story, Andy commented, pouring more wine, especially when the bad guys actually get what they deserve. My mother brought out an old photo album. I found this today. Your father's last family photo. The picture showed all three of us at a park, laughing at something off camera. I was 12, gap-toothed and happy, not knowing it would be our last photo together. He'd be proud, my mother said softly. Not just of the justice, but of the woman you've become. A breaking news alert flashed on TV. Breaking, additional arrests made in Reynolds' murder case. Former Judge Marcus and Police Commissioner Stevens taken into custody. The dominoes are falling, Andy said. Once Alan started talking, everyone's rushing to make deals. Faith raised her glass. To the power of karma. And patience, my mother added. And evidence. Andy chimed in with a smirk. I thought about Melvin in his cell, probably realizing his entire world was crumbling. About Alan spilling decades of secrets. About all the corrupt power players watching their empires collapse. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Agent Sarah. Found the missing millions, every penny accounted for. Ready to discuss restitution tomorrow? I showed the message to Andy, who grinned. Perfect timing. The divorce hearing is tomorrow, too. So what's next? Faith asked. I looked at my father's photo, then at the TV showing Melvin's meltdown in court, and finally at the family surrounding me. The real family who'd helped bring justice after 20 years. Next, I said, we make sure everyone who helped cover up my father's murder faces consequences. Then we use the restitution money to set up a foundation in his name, helping expose corporate fraud and protecting whistleblowers. He would have loved that, my mother whispered. Outside, reporters were still camped on the lawn, waiting for statements. But in here, surrounded by truth and justice at last, I finally felt at peace. The gavel struck with finality as the judge delivered Melvin's sentence. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. I sat perfectly still, watching my ex-husband's shoulders slump as the reality hit him. Alan had already received his 20-year sentence last week for his role as an accessory. Hope, Melvin called out as they led him away. Please. I stood up, finally ready to speak the words I'd held back for months. My father begged too, didn't he? Right before you killed him? His face crumpled. For the first time, I saw real remorse in his eyes. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Save it for your prison counselor. Outside the courthouse, Faith handed me a tablet showing the morning's headlines. Corporate fraud ring dismantled, 32 prominent figures indicted. Below that, Thomas Reynolds Foundation launches whistleblower protection program. The first case just came in, Faith said. Another accounting firm, similar pattern of fraud. Send it to Andy, I replied. And call Agent Sarah. She'll want to... Hope! A familiar voice cut through the crowd. Skylar pushed through the reporters, clutching a folder. I found something else. In one of Melvin's old storage units. She handed me the folder with shaking hands. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all written by my father in the weeks before his death. Letters documenting everything he'd discovered, addressed to the SEC but never sent. He was going to expose everything, I said softly. Not just the fraud, but the whole network. There's more. Skylar pulled out a final letter, this one addressed to me. He wrote this the day he died. My mother appeared at my side as I opened it. The paper was aged, but his handwriting was clear. My dearest Hope, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I've discovered things that powerful people want to keep hidden. But remember what I always told you. Truth finds a way. Stay strong, stay honest, and never let anyone make you feel powerless. All my love, Dad. We did it, Dad, I whispered. We found the way. Andy approached with more news. The restitution hearing just ended. The judge approved everything. Full recovery of all stolen funds plus damages. The foundation is fully funded. And Melvin's offshore accounts? Faith asked. Seized. Every penny going to the victims. My mother squeezed my hand. Thomas would have loved this part best. The money going back to the people they stole from. A young reporter pushed forward. Mrs. Ward, how does it feel to see justice served after 20 years? I thought about my answer carefully. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about restoration, about making things right. And what about the foundation? Another called out. Why focus on protecting whistleblowers? Because my father died trying to tell the truth. The foundation ensures no one else has to make that choice. Back at my mother's house, where it all started, Faith was setting up for the foundation's first board meeting. Skylar had agreed to testify against the remaining defendants in exchange for immunity and a position helping other whistleblowers come forward. The first case looks solid, Andy said, reviewing files. Similar pattern to what your father found. Hidden accounts, falsified records. But this time, Faith added, they won't get away with it. Agent Sarah arrived with fresh evidence from the ongoing investigation. 3 more arrests this morning. The whole corrupt network is falling apart. I walked to my father's photo, now hanging prominently in the foundation's conference room. Next to it was a plaque with his favorite quote, "Truth finds a way." You know what's ironic? My mother said, joining me. Melvin thought marrying you would protect his secrets. Instead, he gave you the perfect position to expose them all. Karma works in mysterious ways. Faith quipped. My phone buzzed. Another whistleblower coming forward, inspired by our story. Another chance to protect someone brave enough to speak up. Ready for the next case? Andy asked. I looked around the room at my unlikely team. Faith with her unwavering loyalty. Andy with his legal brilliance. Skylar with her insider knowledge. Agent Sarah with her dedication to justice. And my mother with her unshakable strength. You know what Dad would say. I smiled. Truth finds a way. Through us, my mother added. Through us, everyone echoed. Outside, the sun was setting on one chapter of our lives, but I wasn't sad. We had transformed a 20-year-old tragedy into a force for good, a way to protect others from suffering the same fate. The foundation's phone rang again, another whistle ready to blow, another truth ready to find its way into the light. I picked up the receiver, ready to help write the next chapter of justice. Thomas Reynolds Foundation, I answered. How can we help you tell your truth?